Hello, welcome to this match in the medium games tournament between HaloAndy007 and SportingElijah, henceforth known as Andy and Elijah. This is a match in the pool play rounds still. We've got a couple more matches in pool play rounds. Andy's played 2 matches and has 7 wins out of 8, looks like, and Elijah's played 1 match and has 3 wins. So they're both at the top of this group, the thyme group, my least favorite herb spice. So that has nothing to do, of course, with the players in this group. That was just a random assignment of players to groups. Let's take a look at this kingdom. We have some trashing with sacrifice, is something you can do. We have villages. We have draw, wild hunts. We have extra gains with smugglers. We have +5 with festival. Grand market for fun grand market stuff. We also have colonies and platinum. So you want to build fairly large in a kingdom with colonies. So I think it's worth it to take a little bit more time to trash here. Try to get thin. Maybe you end up getting a silver or 2, get some ports, get some wild hunts for draw going. And the wild hunt pile may be important as a draw pile, but try to get thin enough on coppers with sacrifices so you can start buying grand markets, because that's really what you want to do here is a lot of the time with grand markets. And you can accomplish that here while still being productive. When you're not hitting 6 for grand market, you can be buying wild hunts and ports and festivals. Andy opens sacrifice silver. Elijah opens smuggler silver. I think once I've seen my opponent open with sacrifice, I'm more likely to not want to get the smugglers, because on the turn when they have the smugglers, on the turn when they have the sacrifice, they may sacrifice an estate and buy a silver or buy nothing if they have 2 coppers to estate sacrifice. So in those turns, you're not going to get much value out of your smugglers. You really want to be using the smugglers to gain those 5 and 6 costs. So wild hunt, festival, grand market. So because of that, I would probably open with silver sacrifice. As happens, Andy hits 5 both times. So that did not. The smugglers paid off already. Got festival. Here, though, the smugglers is not going to do very much. I don't think you want a second smugglers. It seems early for that. You don't want to add that many terminals to your deck. Maybe if you had a couple of sacrifices already, then I would consider getting the smugglers and feel comfortable trashing them in my sacrifice, but it feels a bit early for that. It's going to be a nice turn for Andy. They made a pretty committal decision there. They could have trashed an estate and had 7 and bought something, but instead they trashed a copper and got a grand market. So, that estate is a worse card for their deck, but grand market obviously is a very, very good card for their deck. So I think I stand by that decision and think it was a good decision to do it that way. So now at this point, Andy wants to add villages, wild hunts. They've got 1 festival, 1 wild hunt, 1 sacrifice. This turn's going to be a little bit sad depending on what Elijah buys. Yeah, so since Andy's got their grand market down there at the bottom half, I think they should just gain a port and pass turn. Even if this estate had been the copper from that they could have trashed before, they'd only have 2, and there's nothing you can do on 2. Honestly, there's nothing I would really do on 3 on this kingdom. I might even start passing 3s, especially if my opponent's not yet into the grand market stuff. I think, Andy's just never had a good time to buy ports. It's weird to buy ports on a hand where you have a lot more money, but certainly they're going to need to add ports to their deck if they're going to accomplish stuff. We can also look at Frog here. So that last turn they did use the smugglers, but so here, I'm probably just going to sacrifice an estate here. They can Frog the wild hunt. Again, they go for the 6. I probably would have sacrificed an estate there and bought a festival, but it's hard to pass up the grand market again. They really do need to look to get a pair of ports, and there's a lot of stuff they need to look to get, but a pair of ports and a sacrifice is what I'd be looking to get here, if they can draw through with their wild hunt here. There's a little bit of a nice synergy with wild hunt. You can take the points and the estates, and then you can sacrifice the estate with sacrifice for 2 VP. I think that's a minor consideration. You don't want to do that until you have full deck control and you're getting a lot of value out of that. Doing that too early seems fairly costly. So Andy's got 2 grand markets and a sacrifice down there, so I certainly think they want to trigger this shuffle. They also have their smugglers down there, so they've got good stuff they can draw. And I certainly want to trigger a shuffle and see these grand markets because they're the most powerful card in your deck, so you want to start playing them pretty often. I think in terms of other cards we haven't really talked about, Duke and Bank are probably not going to see much play. Bank because you want to play grand markets, you don't want to play coppers. So Bank doesn't do as well in that situation. Duchy Duke can be nice, but you know the Duke pile is worth 24 points. If you have all 8 Dukes, the Duchy pile is worth 64 points. So that's 88 points for 16 cards. The Colony pile is worth 80 points for similar money, and you can just buy a couple Dukes at the end to disrupt your opponent. So you're going to get more points going for a Colony build, and it's going to be a lot faster, and then you don't have to deal with the 16 green cards in your deck, whereas if you have a bunch of Colonies, you know, you generally prefer the VP that is in the more dense form, because then you have fewer VP cards cluttering up your deck for the effects. So Elijah had a similar decision to either get a grand market or something else, and they elected to get the Wild Hunt. And they're building quite a nice engine, it looks like here. They've got a lot of draw and villages going. Andy, on the other hand, has the grand markets, so that's a nice thing to have. I think you just play this Wild Hunt. You have another grand market down there. Again, you have a sacrifice. You have a port down there you can draw, so you can get another village. I think you can smuggle a festival here. Smuggle a festival, and then buy for 10, buy Wild Hunt and 2 ports. That will get you drawing a little bit more. They're going a little bit of a different route. We'll see if they trash the copper or the... Yeah, so they trash the copper, so they're going to get, I assume, here a grand market and a pair of ports. Yep, so again, they're a little bit over-terminaled, so they add some more villages, which makes complete sense. Elijah kind of drew all their action cards and had a nice turn last turn, so this turn's not quite as nice. Still able to buy a Wild Hunt. And I assume Andy will just take a Wild Hunt back here. I think we're at the point of the game where you have enough villages that you want to take the pair of ports here instead of the festival. And I think Andy is over-terminaled, and adding the pair of ports there would have been better for the deck. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it seems to me that that's the case. They've also not been able to play Sacrifice sometimes, and they've been playing it mostly on coppers. So, you know, this game may end on the port pile, the Wild Hunt pile, and with grand markets around, the estate pile can empty very, very quickly. So, and Wild Hunts. So, this game may end before that thing really matters. Certainly here with this setup, I would consider taking the 7 VP. That's a lot of victory points, and especially in a kingdom where the estates can run. They did not do that there. I think they have 2 more. They have at least 1 more Wild Hunt, so they consider playing on. Yeah, at some point you have to decide you have 4 or 5 Wild Hunts and you just want to take this 9 victory points. It's a lot of victory points. If you didn't draw a Wild Hunt in one of these draws, I think your opponent would be quite happy, which is a good test. Would your opponent be very happy if you didn't take the estates there? And the answer in this case is they would be very, very happy that you didn't take the estates. So that lets me know that it makes sense. A little bit of a sad draw for Elijah, but they can sacrifice the Smugglers. I did not see that they'd reaped last turn. That's interesting. I would have considered taking the last Wild Hunt or even more ports. The predominant thing being I just want to be able to draw my whole deck every turn. And if I don't play some coppers, I don't play some coppers. We'll see if they don't trigger the shuffle. They do trigger the shuffle. Unfortunately, the way this worked out, the parity of the VP, it's going to be easy for Andy potentially to get a bunch of VP next turn. And again, there's only 1 Wild Hunt left. That takes 5 money. Ports come in pairs, so you only need 12 money to get the ports. That's 17 money to empty those 2 piles, and I expect that to actually happen pretty quickly. And then, every wild hunt can gain an estate, and they've both got, 4 or 5 wild hunts, and then each grand market itself can buy an estate. So the game could be over in, 2 turns. It would not be surprising to me. Festivals as well are very low. In fact, with perfect draw, I don't think Andy can pile out, but it's pretty close. They can smuggle a festival, for example, that gives them another 2 money and another buy. So we start to look at the festival and estate pile. Probably here I would just take the points and get another pair of ports. Again, I like that the festivals give you plus buy, but having the pair of ports gives you, the festival doesn't draw and port does, and it gives you 2 of them, so you have more chance of lining up the ports at the beginning of your turns with the wild hunts. And since Andy's got this 11-point lead right now, potentially more than that, potentially if they get 5 more points this turn, would be a 12-point lead. So they have a 9-point lead right now. They potentially go up to 14-point lead, if I do math correctly. And that's a lot of VP, and it's going to be almost impossible for Elijah to pile out and score enough points. So, Andy could be okay lowering piles here, either the ports or the festivals. As I said, I like the festivals here. Sorry, I like the ports here. I used the plural, which means I meant ports. So Elijah's got a fairly straightforward start to the turn. Play village, play draw. And unfortunately, they also weren't able to get a big turn off this turn. They didn't put a bunch of estate points in the wild hunt, so they can hope that maybe Andy plays a bunch of wild hunts and doesn't take the points this turn. We'll see what they can with Smugglers port. So now Andy can empty the ports with 1 smuggler play and $4 worth of buy. So after that, all it takes is 12 money to empty the estates. So that's 16 money and 7 buys. And they've got 3 or 4 grand markets, 3 or 4 festivals. So the value's in the deck to actually do that pile out, even without using wild hunts to gain estates. But obviously, 1 or 2 more wild hunt plays to gain estate get you there much faster. I'm not sure about the reap at this point of the game. I think they needed to take they had 10, right? I think they needed to take a province there. So yeah, we're seeing why the ports are so nice. Get some more draw going. I actually think we should pause here and see if we have a pile out. I'm almost certain we have a pile out in hand here. So smuggle a port. No, we're a little bit short on money. Just a touch short on money. We can consider there's maybe 2 more wild hunts down there. We consider sacrificing the smugglers to draw on. Yeah, so if this wild hunt gains estate, then they just need 10, 18, and 7 buys, which they have. So they can buy the 3 ports here for 8, and then 5 estates for 10, and that's exact money. And they found a pile out. So nicely done by Andy. I liked the sacrifice opening over the smugglers. That was where they diverged. I thought other than that, Elijah played well. Had a bad draw that last. They both kind of had bad draws. Elijah had a little bit of a bad draw there. Had a lot of good cards in the deck that they could have found to get closer on VP. So Andy's leading 1-0 going into game 2.